the good news is the labour market going into this growth scare looks pretty decent.
Yes, right. By the way, I feel great, and thanks for having me back on the show, Jonathan. The labor market looks excellent, very strong, and incidentally, most sectors in the economy look strong. We're through the first 2 months of the first quarter, right? So we got January and February, and some of the China influence is already affecting us, but the numbers are probably better than anybody thought. You may be 2.5% to 3% in the first quarter. I know, as a realist, economic growth is likely to slow in the second quarter and maybe the third. I don't want to get too far ahead of it because some of these virus numbers in China come way down. Outside China, not so much. But I'm just saying the U.S. economy is very strong. 273,000 jobs. And as you know, Jonathan, with revisions, 358,000 jobs. That's a blowout. And wage rates still rising. And, you know, the blue-collar boom we've talked about, still there from these data. Middle-income, lower-wage people are outperforming their managers. Unemployment rate, 3.5% across the board, every single demographic group. So that's awfully good. Housing is improving. Building is improving. You had a lot of construction jobs in this report and a pickup in manufacturing. So, yes, the economic base is strong. The fundamentals of the economy is strong. We are going to see some issues coming up from the coronavirus. I get that. But I think for the United States, this is going to be a temporary problem.
Larry, not a time to panic, but a time to be prepared. And I hope it's temporary as well. We've seen the rate cuts from the Federal Reserve, an emergency 50 basis point cut. What's the administration working on to complement that?
You know, any of our fiscal policies, Secretary Mnuchin and I talking about it, Treasury and NEC and other groups are helping us. We're in the camp, Jonathan, that wants timely and targeted micro measures, not large, sweeping, you know, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that don't affect incentives and don't affect growth in any permanent way. You know, we're worried about people who may have problems with jobs and wages because they have to stay home. We're worried about small businesses, for example, that might need some help to get through this if it turns out. We're worried about certain sectors of the economy, airlines coming to mind, but I don't want to get too deep on that, that might need some help. We're looking for targeted measures that will do the most good in a short period of time, not large macro kinds of solutions which don't help economic incentives and have no permanent impact on growth. We want to just get through this and help folks as much as we can in a targeted way.
Larry, that's music to my ears because we've got a bit of a problem here. This can be temporary. It's a one-off shock. It will fade. But what will determine how temporary this is the kind of tools we have ready to deploy to help SMEs, to help some people who are struggling if they've got to stay at home. So walk me through the policies, the actual policies. You're having the discussion. When do we start to get some results?
Stay tuned. Stay with us. We may have more to say about this next week. You know, I think we need to do this, Jonathan, when the actual facts come in. Now, we're getting reports from industries. We had the airline people in the White House earlier this week. President Trump's talking to a lot of major sectors across the economy. We just want to keep gathering as many facts and information as we can before we come up with anything specific. But we are looking at this, and as I say, temporary and targeted to get through this, which will be, God willing, a temporary virus problem. You know, that's our approach. We're not looking for big picture, gigantic packages that will not help growth, we've learned in the past, and will be, you know, huge budget busters.
Larry, something you've said concerns me, though, that we're going to wait. We're going to wait to see what the data says. And what I've seen so far is not just the administration, but signs coming from policymakers elsewhere that they're just being held hostage by, say, what happens in the next move in financial markets. And they haven't got the tools ready to deploy when they need to. This should be the planning stage. We should be ready to go. Have we seriously got no policies ready to deploy if things get worse next week, the week after?
My short answer is yes. We can move very rapidly. And we're doing a lot of homework right now on all these points. Jonathan, I don't want to put them out publicly because
I understand, but
We're not
restore
ready.
my confidence, because we have a moment now where there is a real lack of confidence, Larry. And you know me, I don't like to lay it on thick. This isn't about making people fearful of things. I just think there's a lack of confidence in global officials, not on the medical side, and that's not for you and I to discuss today, but on the economic side. Talk to me about the policies. Have we got payroll tax cuts ready to go? Do we have a targeted lending program to SMEs ready to go? Do we have a tax forgiveness season ready to deploy if we need to?
We have made decisions on some of that. Again, payroll tax cuts, we can debate the pros and cons. I lean against them. We've tried them in the past. Temporary tax cut that cost a lot of money, $650 billion. They don't last. There's no incentive effect because they're temporary. Again, Jonathan,
yeah.
I think the basic view here amongst my colleagues is temporary and targeted. So if cash injections are needed to help folks who are at home because of the virus one way or another and lose a paycheck or two, we want to help them. If small businesses are in dire condition in certain parts of the country, we can inject some cash. That could be true in farming. That could be true in manufacturing. That can be true in transportation and a lot of other places. So to pull that trigger will not take much time at all. And probably we'd like to do it internally, if we can by executive order. We just got the $8 billion package from Congress. That's good, helping us on the medical side of this. Very important. Thank them for it.
Yeah.
We may need to come back. If we need to go back to Congress, we will. We won't hesitate. But we are in the planning stage. And by the way, Secretary Mnuchin reminds me the G7 just had a very important conference call, and all these big countries are making their own plans as things develop in those countries. So I don't want to be premature, but yes, this can all be done in a very timely way. We just need, information gathering is very important, Jonathan, and I will say this to you. With respect to the jobs report today, which was a blowout number, I mean, employment is blown out under President Trump way beyond what anybody thought possible, but that good income numbers, good consumer spending, good housing numbers, let's not assume the worst. You've got a menu of options here. All right, some options are negative. Some options are either less negative or rather positive. And I want to, wait and see how that plays out. The same is true with the actual medical reports on the contagion of the virus.
But Larry,
so let's just wait and see. Let's not extrapolate.
I totally agree.
Worst case.
And I don't want to teach you how to be a policymaker. You're far more experienced than me. But you know what this is about. You hope for the best. You prepare for the worst. You've told me you're ready to move quickly. Let's talk about thresholds. I've got a bond market with yields at all-time lows. I've got crude down 7-8% on my screen right now. My Bloomberg terminal is lighting up. It's lighting up. It's the threshold is what will determine you to move and deploy those tools that you say are ready to go in a timely fashion. Does the market dictate that? Does the data dictate that? What dictates that?
Well, look, both will dictate that. But we can't. Look, you've got myself, Secretary Mnuchin, others, President Trump for that matter. We all have a lot of market experience. We all have a lot of private sector business experience. So, yes, of course, we watch financial markets. On the other hand, you have to watch the actual data on the ground, economic data, the health data, the virus-related data. So we have to do that. We can't just make a move because the bond does thus, in 2 hours on Thursday or Friday. We can't do that. We're watching it. We're trying to do our homework and watch everything. I just want to say, though, Jonathan, again, I'm not the medical expert. I am part of the task force. I'm in constant touch on a daily basis with our really experienced CDC people and others who have done such a fabulous job. I mean, I got to give them a lot of credit. They're all over it. Most Americans are not at risk. That is their view. Most Americans are not at risk. The biggest risk cohort is, in fact, the seniors, the elderly folks, and they need to be extra cautious.
Yeah.
The younger you are, the less risk you're facing. And most Americans, over 80%, recover rather easily should they get the virus. I want to put that out because my point is, if you're healthy, and you exercise common sense about washing your hands and Kleenexes for sneezing and coughing and things of that nature, and you avoid the obvious places where there are travel advisors. But most Americans are healthy and should go about their business. That's what I'm saying.
Larry,
that's what the data is suggesting.
I respect you a lot, and you know that, but neither of us are medical professionals, and I have a duty of care to my audience that neither of us are medical professionals, and I want to focus on the economic data, not the data from the virus. On the economic data, it's clear already that delivery times in the PMIs are stretching out. They're getting longer. We've got a supply chain issue. An easy way of addressing the supply chain issue would be to drop some of the tariffs. Why are we not talking about that? You said it's about the data. There's an easy policy response. There's no follow-through. Why not?
Just quickly, the supply chain data shows a slowdown in deliveries. Yes, not huge, I might add, Jonathan. Not yet. Not huge. It may be out there, but so far really quite manageable. With respect to tariff policy, I've not heard the president mention that. It doesn't seem to be on the table right now. We would undoubtedly like to focus much more on our domestic issues, whether they're economic issues or they're health-related issues. So the tariff question is not being addressed at the present time.
But Larry, final question. Can you see why this is a problem for global markets right now? That the president is signing a bill and the only policy initiative he's talking about is cutting rates again and getting the Fed to stimulate. And you and I know you know this, there's a policy ready to go to offset a lot of fear out there at the moment, whether it is justified or not, and there is a reluctance to deploy it. And I just don't understand why.
Well, Jonathan, we have to be thoughtful and careful and analytic. We don't want to willy-nilly throw $300, $400 billion with a $1,000 check to every American.
But Larry, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying a helicopter drop. I'm talking about removing tariffs.
And it doesn't work in the past.
I'm talking about removing tariffs. I'm not talking about helicopter drops. You know I'm not.
Regarding, as I say, removing tariffs, not everyone agrees with your analysis. It's something that thus far is not surfacing yet. We like our China policy, and we like the fact that China has cut its own tariffs. And by the way, when this virus period ends, as it will, you're going to see a major export boom from the United States to China that is going to grow the economy by at least another percentage point in the years ahead, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that towards the end of the year. Regarding other measures that I mentioned, measures that would be timely and targeted towards individuals or small businesses, or perhaps some industrial sectors, that's on the table. We are in the planning, we are in the discussion and planning phase. Jonathan, again, we have to exercise some caution and analysis. We are in touch with everybody in the economy, every single sector. They're coming to visit us on a daily basis, and the president is deeply involved. And my hat's off to the vice president who's leading this healthcare task force. So, Jonathan, don't be impatient. You got to exercise some judgment before you jump in, but we're on it. Trust me, we're on it. I'm telling you this morning, probably more than has been put out publicly. We are on it, and we are looking at these various targeted approaches.